Hello.
So Pranshu already has given, from Karosambho has already given background to circular economy. So that cuts down my time. But what I like to also kind of present to you some key points which, again, I mean, you might be very familiar since you are working in circular economy space. As Pranshu said, circular economy is not something which is very new. In fact, the term was coined in 1990 as a circular economy by two, great scientists called Pierce and Turner. And since then, we are in a way, some way, looking at circular economy, material flows, resource efficiency. And there's some issues which you will be very familiar with, though also hinted by Pranshu, some of these, product life extension, eco-design, long life for goods so that they enter into waste stream at a later stage, reconditioning, reuse activities, renting services instead of owning them, which was also pointed out by Pranshu, waste prevention, because waste prevention is something which is not talked very often. We are used to talking more about waste recycling and reuse, and industrial symbiosis, which also is not a new concept. So that is how circular economy basically looks at conserving resources. And very briefly, I'd also like to point out on an interesting study which was done by Accenture, looking at waste to wealth for New York Stock Exchange some times back, which estimated that the business potential by embracing circular economy could generate US $4.5 trillion equivalent of revenues, in addition to current economic models which are generating revenues. So, naturally, there's also business potential and business case for embracing circular economy by industries and by everyone. Now, Honorable Prime Minister is talking of lifestyle for environment, where he has given some responsibility to individuals as well at what we can do at our own individual level. And key key idea is basically to look at decoupling economic growth from resource use and resource consumption and waste generation, and how do we do that in circular economy framework. So with this very brief background, what I'll do is I'll open the floor for some thoughts on the subject by our esteemed panel members. And I'll start with Ms. Rinika Grover. 5 minutes for each of the panelists to put their thoughts in. And she represents, she's head Sustainability and CSR with Apollo Tyres Ltd. So Ms. Grover.
Greetings to everyone. Thank you, CSR, for inviting Apollo for this conference. Just to give you a little bit of a context in terms of what we've been talking about, and having attended COP, I can only say this: the whole world is talking about climate change, and when we're talking about emissions, water, circular economy, yes, there is a lot of talk about it, but it's still not the focus area. And if we look at globally in terms of what's happening, I'm sure a lot of you in the room, everybody as a person, there is a statistics report which says on an average, every person generates about 0.7 kilograms of waste. I'm sure some of you are aware of it, some of you would not be, but this is something was quite daunting. And out of that 0.7 kilograms, when we look at, 70% of the waste is not processed. So that's the kind of magnitude that we're looking at. Drilling down a little further, I have some more stats over here when we talk about waste. Now, I've already said that the waste is not being processed, but what is the amount of waste that's going to increase? According to a World Bank report, it says about 70% of the waste, what we generate today, is bound to increase by 2050. So then obviously, that's another challenge, another factual information. Yet, we are not talking about it, we're not thinking about it. When we look at the biodiversity loss, which is, again, a very, very key focus at COP, 90% of the biodiversity loss is because of resources extraction, because we're using virgin material or not recycled material. Yet, are we thinking about it? Not really. And the most important thing is, if we look at circularity overall, there is a important, very interesting, and these are all factual informations that kind of gathered during COP27. So I'm sure some of you would have different figures and facts. So apologies for that. But 20% of the GHG emissions are going to be mitigated if we were to look at circularity as a concept. Are we looking at it? No, still. Why do I say that? Because in a circularity gap report, it says that only 9%, less than 9% is what is being, we're looking at in terms of circularity. Rest, 91% is going into waste. It's not being processed at all. So when we look at the overall picture, it's kind of depressing, yes, but still there are a lot of organizations and there's a lot of work that's happening. But there, of course, there is a lot of stuff that we need to do, and I'm sure my co-panelists who are going to be talking about their industries as well. I'll just kind of drill down a little more further in terms of India. India, when we look at the statistics, it talks about the resource material consumption has increased from the 1990 levels, which we talk about the industrial levels, till 2015 by 6 times, and that is going to increase, or it's going to be double by 2030. So it's a huge mammoth task. Just to highlight, I mean, it's no brainer that we need to look at this, because there are definitely, definitely some outcomes which can reduce our emissions, which can mitigate our emissions. But what are the challenges currently? So when we look at, and I'm sure everybody's going to talk, the one thing which comes out very specifically is the reverse logistics, which some of the earlier presentation spoke about as well. Reverse logistics is one key area where there are challenges. And then the other bit is when you're increasing the shelf life of a product, why would businesses not want to do it? Because it kind of defies with the process of profits, because if the product life cycle is increased, so it defies, it kind of, is against the whole principle of capitalism, but yet the businesses would need to adopt it, because at the end of the day, if they were looking at circular economy and using their product, if the product is used for a longer period, then the asset life, their own asset life of their assets would be increased massively. So these are the kind of conundrums one is experiencing when we're looking at circular economy. Now, I represent Apollo Tyres. Yes, there is one thing which is, and I'm sorry, is that something? Okay. So when we look at overall, of course, there is a huge push that can happen through legislation. I'm sure lots of you are aware of it. There is an extended producer responsibility that's recently come in, and earlier it was plastics, then e-waste, and now, of course, tires are also one of the key parts of it. What exactly is happening? There is a lot of work that's happening in this space. The government's not sitting. We're actually lobbying with our partners to see what we can do as well. There is a lot of work we've done in the space earlier, and just to highlight, I had CSR as well. So what we've earlier done, I mean, of course, it wasn't a law, and law is still at a nascent stage at the moment. But in terms of the extended producer responsibility, we've kind of dovetailed it with overall CSR, where we had a lot of studies done in terms of the use of rubber crumb and using that rubber crumb in the play fields, which is at a very minuscule stage, but that's something we've been working for the last few years. The other bit is now, when we're talking about the EPR law, which is out there, the most important thing is not just looking at how you recycle it and how you kind of have the rubber crumb, but also making sure that it's used in your product as a recycled component, which does not contradict, which does not makes the quality of the product or marginalizes the quality of the product. It's a huge task. There is a huge amount of R&D that's happening in this specific area. So if you ask me, is there a clear-cut answer? No, but yet I can say there's one thing that is kind of very, very clear for us. We have looked at European Green Deal because our manufacturing operations are in Europe as well. So what we've done is we've kind of used that as the space. So I said, okay, we need to be moving to circular. So we've said that our product mix by 2030 would have sustainable material, and a percentage of that would be recycled, but that's something for which there's a lot of testing and information and knowledge that's required. So on that note, I thought I'll just give you a bit of a global perspective in terms of what is happening and what we're doing. If you have any queries, I'll be happy to answer those.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rinika. And I'm happy to hear that industries are looking at implementing EPR in different manner because EPR currently is in very nascent stage in the country, and a lot of focus presently is on looking at end of pipe solution rather than looking at product specific, product redesign solutions and product recyclability and production for environment solutions. Our next panelist is Mr. Nirbhay Lumde, Head Sustainability and CSR Asia Pacific, SBU CGI. So Mr. Nirbhay Lumde, for another next 5 minutes.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Pandey. I think thanks to the keynote which spoke about circularity as a business opportunity for sure, and also Dr. Pandey also spoke about how it's multi-billion-dollar opportunity for sure. I represent a company called CGI. It's an IT and ITS company, a $12 billion Canadian-based company, and I head the CSR and sustainability for Asia Pacific. When you speak about circularity, plenty of us actually believe that does some of the electronic or electrical goods that we really look at it, are they of double use? Can we really recycle it? Can we really repair it? On that note, I would like to share something about how did we use circularity more in a community engagement, something that the CSR or the NGOs sector really can replicate. This is something that we have done together with under PPP, Public-Private Partnership. Most of us really realize that we see landfills, especially the landfill that comes from the homes. What do we have a solution? Do we have a solution? And what kind of waste that really come to us when you look at the kitchen or maybe at home? So home has multiple waste. One is for sure we have the dry, and the other is called wet waste. Looking at wet waste, we work very closely with Bangalore Municipal Corporation, which is one of the largest in terms of the revenue. We worked with an NGO called Sahas, which is into recycling and waste segregation. And about 3-4 years ago, we began something very small scale. Then we felt it's an opportunity for us while we look at landfills, what more could be done. There is lots of skepticism around landfills for sure. There's a big revenue around moving the waste from one place to other place. So what we did is we picked up one constituency, one urban constituency in Bangalore. We set up something called biomethanation plant. It's nothing but, in simple terms, setting up an biogas plant equivalent of what you see in cow dung. It's about kitchen waste. We set up an army of people in terms of collecting the waste. We had taken up to the homes, say that let's segregate the waste at homes. We had a waste collection unit. We began something at 1.5 metric tons per day recycling or biomethanation. Today we are proud sponsors of 8 metric tons of waste that's happening at Bangalore. While this was more about, while it began at home, because that really matters most, we also had partnership from the municipal corporation. They gave us a space. Those of you here from the urban segments really realize how difficult when it comes to kitchen waste especially. If you let it unattended, it's going to create a mess for sure. I'm sure those of you who have passed by landfills will realize. Today, with this help, we picked about such waste, about 9,000 metric tons of waste that has really supposed to go to the landfill is recycled. I'll come here about circularity. How did we do this? Today, per day, about on average, 10 metric tons comes to this place, which is collected from the homes, gets into the plant. We convert this to a biogas. With 5,000 odd metric tons of waste, today we are creating about 25,000 kilo equivalent of LPG. That today, while we have the opportunity, while we collect and we burn fuel to collecting, we sell this equivalent to a nearby restaurant. So therefore, that's where the waste that comes from the home comes here for us, converts into a biogas, goes to a restaurant, we make revenue there. Now, what does happen to the what does happen to the slurry that really comes out of it? While it is a process of over days and weeks together, the slurry that comes out of the waste is equivalent of a manure that goes back to the agricultural farming. And I'm very proud to share that today we have got a couple of MLAs coming forward and saying that they will replicate across not about urban Bangalore, but beyond that. So there's a huge opportunity in terms of waste itself as an circularity, the way you look at it. It's not an easy task for sure. It's one of the toughest for sure. You will have lots of resistance for sure, be it from your lobbies or otherwise. So while we have done something at a large scale, looking at some of these things, we felt, does a small scale is really worth doing it? So we did pick up a smaller engagement at 500 kilos per day kind of capacity. We picked up a community kitchen in Chennai. We picked up today. Today, the kitchen waste over a month's time, 25% of their LPG is used from the biogas, which really comes from the same kitchen. So therefore, the kitchen waste, while they cook it, comes back as a waste, gets converted into a biogas. The waste goes to the farmers, and the biogas which is used is 20% of their current LPG is used from the same kitchen. So when I summarize it, certainly circularity, when you look at it from a waste, certainly feasible, possible. What it certainly takes patience for sure. It's not certainly, as Rinika was talking about it, it's certainly not low in terms of the expense. It's high investment for sure. So therefore, here is an opportunity, especially if you're looking at a CSR engagement, there is certainly an opportunity for sure. It's an opportunity in terms of, while you look at urban segments, even tier 2, tier 3 cities can replicate such a story for sure. Some of these things really replicable for sure. So investment in patience, time, effort, in terms of dollars or rupees is equally important for you. So therefore, circularity in terms of the waste is certainly feasible, doable. I'm more than happy to address some of the queries around it. I will be happy to share. Thanks CSR Box for the opportunity.
Yep. Thank you Nirbhay. We'll take it in the end. Your remarks. Yeah, sure. Just a second, since they are recording, I think it will be good if you can speak on.
I'm also from Bangalore, and I work in waste too. And I know Sahas, I know the biomethanization plant, everything. But it's not only biomethanization plants that we can do. We can do composting at home, composting within an apartment complex, so that no wet waste need to go out of your complex.
Very true.
So about 60 to 65% of the waste that we produce in a home is wet waste. So if we can do in your own kitchen, you can make very nice organic compost, which you can use in your garden, in your, in your terrace or wherever you can use it. So that is one. And biomethanization plants, yes, definitely. And Bangalore, actually to start with, had decided to have every ward one biomethanization plant, but thanks to the implementation laxity, etc., it hasn't happened. But well, some people like him have taken it up and have done it. Then the dry waste, which is about...
Since we have limited time, shall we finish with the panelists and then we can come back to this again?
No, I was just adding to what he has said.
We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it again because different panelists have different perspective to provide. So let's hear them first and then we'll come back to it again.
Yeah.
So our next panelist is Ms. Saranya Pradhan. She's heading sustainability operations in Mc.Cain, and she would share her thoughts with you in the next 5 minutes or so. Saranya.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey. Thank you, CSR Box, for having me here. I represent Mc.Cain Foods, and we are in the frozen food sector. When we talk about circularity, the first thought or the first image that comes to mind is waste, especially plastic waste, right? But let's take a step back and let's talk about resource efficiency here. The plastic waste that we're generating, what if we used less of it while you're manufacturing something? How do you do that? Is it possible by going back to the design board? The first speaker, he spoke about it, Pranshu, redesigning, right? Be it plastic, be it paper. And it's not just about plastic or paper. So Mc.Cain, we identify primarily as a farming company because we work first hand with about 3,500 farmers across the world. We grow potatoes with them. So circularity for us begins there, at the farm. How do we ensure that we use our resources minimally, be it water, be it fertilizers? How do we ensure that the potato that gets produced, there's minimal wastage while transporting from the farm to processing? How do we ensure that, and that's about farming. Now come to manufacturing. How do you ensure that while processing, there is again minimal wastage of that same potato? How do you make best use of it? Even the peels, even the starch? How much water are you actually using during manufacturing? How much energy are you actually consuming to produce 1 ton of your product, right? What kind of energy? Fossil, renewable? Then comes packaging. Now, ours being a frozen product, there are certain packaging requirements that are, I would say, different from an ambient product, say a packet of chips or a packet of biscuits. Having said that, now that is the limitation. Within that limitation, how do you improve on that packaging? How do you reduce? What materials that you use? So that, number one, it should not even go into landfill. Now landfill is the, the evil word here. But how do you reduce the usage of that plastic or that cardboard box into which those plastic packets go in? So that is where our focus is on every single step of the way. Of course, there is EPR. It's mandatory, it's compliance. We do EPR and we do more than we are required to do. But that is not the end of it. We are also signatories to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And till now, the partners that we had did generate energy out of waste, which you can't do as long if you are a signatory of Ellen MacArthur. What do? The amount of plastic that we generate, we do pick it up from the market or even more. But then what do we do with it? What products can we use? Can we make out of them? Then comes the problem of downcycling. The quality of plastic that goes into the market to the consumers and the product that is made after recycling it, how do we ensure that that product is at least of the same quality and not just plastic benches, like mentioned. Plastic benches, good, I mean, not bad, but what next? How can we do it better? So that is something that we are still exploring. We are, of course, a zero liquid discharge plant. We've ensured that none of our waste goes into landfill. So all of that compliances, yes, we meet, but efforts are on to ensure, of course, the packaging that we still use are recyclable, and the idea is to ensure that all of the packaging that we use actually becomes either recyclable or compostable by 2030. So that is what we are working towards, if we just talk about packaging and packaging waste. So, like Ms. Grover just mentioned, 91% of the waste generated doesn't get recycled. And that's a sad fact, it's a hard fact. But I would say companies, industries, even individuals are getting conscious towards it and are genuinely making efforts towards it. Of course, there are barriers, of course, there are challenges, regulatory challenges, challenges of having the right technology at scale. But we are making the efforts. So I'll leave it at that note. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Saranya. Thank you very much. And these are probably some of these challenges also are business opportunities for us to look at when we look at different ways to basically valorize waste and to add value in the way we process waste. Our next speaker is Ms. Abida Aneez, who is Vice President, Associate Vice President CSR with Legrand India. Ms. Abida.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey, and thank you, CSR Box, for giving this opportunity. So as my co-panelists all talked about circular economy, I'm not going into again to deep dive. I would, as a Legrand, being a global specialist in electrical and digital infrastructure building, you know very well the 40% of green gas emissions happens through buildings. So we provide solutions to the buildings with the, our products, which is simple, innovative, and sustainable, and by usage and design. That's a responsibility. We take it up as a Legrand at the Legrand level. So I'm happy to share some of the factors, some of the best practices which we have internally applied, because we are globally committed for net zero emission by 2050 and 50% emissions reduction by 2030. It's not only carbon emissions, but circular economy, also an integrated approach we are doing regularly in our all the day-to-day actions or in our all our products. You know very well, we have more than 2 lakhs products across we produce. So our actions start from the internal. That's from the 4 phases we say. One from the design stage. It's a first product design phase. So we fundamentally, when I talk about limiting down to the waste management, we go by the 3R mechanism. One is reduce, reuse, and recycle. So reducing wastage and recycling of the maximum wastage is our motto, which we apply in across our plant process. So initial, we start from the first stages, conceiving stage, we say it's a design stage. So we innovate the products which are giving the maximum life scale. So Ms. Rinika talked about some companies, but we are definitely proud to say that we are being known in the country, in the industry for more than a century just because of the quality. And we give the solution which is long term, which definitely give limiting down the users for replacement. And we promote, definitely there is no compromise, we give the long term life for the product. And that is on the first design stage. We use definitely what is more, our continuously, I know our product team, continuously researching for giving the most recyclable and most reusable material to use, and also limiting down when in our all new product range, we have to reduce mandatorily 2% of product weight has to reduce. So that is how the linear consumption of plastics and metals has to be there. So in our production, in our 2024 roadmap also, we have to reduce or increase the usage of recyclable plastic by 20%, and 40% of metal has to be recycled. So recycled metal only to be used in the consumption. So you can imagine where our switches, where we are primary premium products, usage of this kind of recycling metals and plastics in our products itself is not an easy task. But yes, this is, the innovation definitely demands. That's where we come up with the good solutions as well. So that is on the designing phase. Secondly, we go on a manufacturing process. The process level also, we go for reducing the waste at maximum. So for example, I can tell you for our MCB production, with DMC material and the plastics are the basic raw material. So what we do is the DMC initially, it was going to the landfill. However, this has prompted us to do a research, and we found that these DMC materials which comes out of after the production can be used as a fuel in cement industry. So yearly 500 tons we are now preventing the landfill by giving this to a boost to another industry where it is a need of the raw material. So plastic, whatever we are coming out of wastage, 20% of plastic we regrind and reuse it. Initially, we had a lot of apprehension, I could say that, but we were successfully now implementing 20% of our plastics are coming out of the wastage of this, our production, we are regrinding, reusing, and the rest of the plastic we are sending for recycling, because our plastics are recyclable material which we are choosing it. So this is one example. Even another example I could tell that, okay, the hydraulic oil, which we use in injection molding machine. I'm just giving away, maybe it may not be, but those who are corporates, this can be a solution, we are happy to share. Hydraulic oil we use in the injection oil, after 20,000 of usage, it is actually waste. we have to replace it. So earlier this was a big challenge because again this was to go, this is hazardous as well. So what we had, we have implanted, we have to invest. You talked about invest. Yes, we have done a huge investment on putting our efforts in how we can make a proper economic, circular economy in our action. So we have implanted filters, filtration mechanism where all the oil can be reused. We remix with the fresh oil and reusing it. So this is another example I could say. So second, what I'm saying is the reusable action. Also we are talking about. Then going to the distribution level. So third cycle is distribution, and fourth is use and end of the life cycle of the product. So distribution also, what we do is we have another KPI for package material reduction. Whatever the packaging material, we have to minimum 5% material reduction we have to do in the, it is not easy. Because we have produced a lot of bundle on cross and cross products we sell day and day. So the product, whatever the packaging, because of course as a customer, you yourself consumers, you cannot compromise on the appearance of the package. But we are making a lot of effort to reduce by even just simple flap also, we are thinking of eliminating. So this is how another factor coming in. And secondly, on the packaging also, I would like to highlight here is 90% of our package material we are using is renewable material. We are not. So when you talk about the recovery, waste recovery, I can happily say that at globally, our 2021, we have achieved 92% of waste recovery. 92%. And we are aiming for 100% actually. So it was not easy because we started this journey 18 years back. And slowly, step by step, we have achieved this and we implementing at all the countries wherever we are operating. And India, I would say, even though our global average 90%, in India it was 98%. So we have achieved this by working through recycle, because some of the I could say reusable packages, what we get is, we are insisting the vendors to come for us as a virgin material 3 to 4 times. So this is the KPI we give to the supplier as well. So we engaging them to use for the circular economy, that we insist for the reusable material as much as, and we are 2024, of course needless to say, we are also committed for reducing our single-use plastic. This year it was less, but however next year 50% reduction, and by 2024 zero. That is the 100% ban of single-use plastic is what we are committed. It's not easy. So any of you has any good solution, we are happy to listen to you, because we still in the process of identifying the right alternative for the current, because plastic, whatever you say, nothing can replace actually in a single filming and all. But paper, when you have a durability, when you supply chain management challenges and appearance, of course, customers, even channel, everybody look has a feel of stitches or whatever it comes with that transparent. So honestly speaking, when, as you rightly said, we still in the process of innovation where we wanted to identify the solution for this. So last on the life cycle, as I mentioned, we definitely look for, we have a PEP certified, 72% of our sales, what we produce is PEP, which is Product Environment Declaration Certified Product. That is what our commitment is, so that 72% of the product we are selling is absolutely recyclable and not harmful to the environment. So this is what I would like to share from our company practices.
Thank you, Abida. And very interestingly, a word of caution, when you look at replacing single-use plastic, don't look at alternatives which are also again single-use. So, I mean, that's a caution. And our next speaker is Ms. Sagarika Bose, who is lead CSR with Godrej Consumer Products Ltd. So Sagarika, next 5 minutes are yours.
Thank you very much, CSR Box, for this opportunity. And thank you for all of you turning up. It's a big crowd. It's good to see this many people interested in circularity and in waste management. So, I think my co-panelists have done a brilliant job of already talking about what is happening at the global level, what we are doing in different industries. So I'm not going to dwell too much on the background and the context and what's happening around the world. But I think the one thing that stood out for me, and it's evident perhaps in many of the ways corporates are dealing with circularity, and that it's a process, still a journey, right? We are all in this journey together. We're still figuring things out. None of us have perfect solutions for every aspect of the way we are managing and running our businesses and the impact we have on the planet and people. But we are figuring it out. And I think this is true for all of us as individuals as well, right? Because circularity doesn't just apply to what businesses are doing, right? Of course, citizens and corporates need to be responsible. There's no doubt about it, and they probably have a greater accountability because they have a greater impact. But circularity and specifically waste management is something that applies to all of us, because if you think about it, the only way to effectively deal with it is to stop consumption, right? I'm saying that in my personal capacity, by the way. This is not a corporate stance, but seriously, that's the only way we'll be able to completely deal with this problem. But we're not going there, right? Because we're all used to a certain lifestyle, we all used to a certain way of how we operate today, and we like our conveniences, and that's why we've come to this stage. So, so I think the idea, the crux of my, conversation with all of you today is going to be about that. How can we do this as partners, right? And therefore, as partners, I need to tell you about the journey that we are on right now, and it's still a journey. We're still getting there. Godrej is now a 120 plus, 25-year plus company. Around 2011, we felt the need to have a very structured sustainability and CSR plan, and that's when we put up some really ambitious sustainability goals for ourselves, right? We set up, and one of them was that we'd have zero waste to landfill by 2020. I'm happy to say that Godrej Consumer Products reached there in 2018. So we're currently zero waste to landfill as far as our operations are concerned. We are also zero waste liquid discharge. Of course, we are also compliant with EPR, so we are 100% EPR compliant. We're also working towards ensuring that 80% of all packaging will be recyclable by 2025. And in line with the PWM rules, we will also ensure that at least 30% of our rigids come from PCR. Now, if you're talking about PCR, the way to, if you ask any company, getting a solid PCR pipeline is a challenge. And why is that? Because we are not recovering enough plastic from the whole waste management space. And for that, and that's where the CSR aspect comes in. We have to look at source segregation. So, madam, I didn't get your name, from Bangalore. You made a very, very critical point, which is what can we do in our homes, right? And that's why I said this is a partnership, right? Corporates are not alone responsible. Governments are not alone responsible. We as citizens have to do our bit. We have to change our behavior. And that starts in our homes. If we start source segregation, many of the cities we live in, many of the wards, corporations we live in have instituted these practices. How many of us can truly say we do this? I don't want to do a show of hands because it'll be abysmal, but it's difficult, right? I mean, I know it's challenges, but the point is, if we can start to wear seatbelts in the back seat because there's a mandate, I think we can do segregation at home as well, right? So coming back to that, so for us, in our CSR in portfolio, waste management is a very important area of investment. This is something we've been doing for the last 5 to 6 years. We've got a range of different projects. We've worked with just awareness raising. We've worked on some infra projects similar to what Nirbhay mentioned. And we've had a range of successes and failures. Some things have worked and some things have not. But what we are now trying to do is to look at it comprehensively. And I'm happy to see a couple of known faces here, partners we are working with, where, we have to start at the citizen level. We have to work with the sanitation workers. You know, circularity or any of this is not going to happen without sanitation workers being given the dignity, safety, social security, and the compensation they deserve. None of that. I mean, it's an industry, right? I mean, I think one of the things that Pranshu mentioned, that it was primarily informal, right? We're trying to make it formal, now trying to bring it in and operationalize it and streamline it and make it a commercial, profitable business. But in that, the human element we often still miss out on. And in India, we know that, yeah, caste, all of that gets into the picture, and therefore sanitation workers are the last people. So that becomes a critical part as well in our model right now. So we work with citizens, we work with sanitation workers, and we work with the municipal corporations, because that is hugely important as well, because CSR, again, as many of my co-panelists have already mentioned, Pranshu's mentioned, CSR, the funds alone will only be able to do, you know, probably a few drops in the ocean. Beyond that, ultimately, this has to become sustainable. How does it become sustainable if we don't work with municipal corporations and make them you know, bring in systems in there, bring in processes in there, make them more accountable and transparent, and build their capacities. Because honestly, we have about 5 projects we are working across the country right now. Some of them are doing this for the first time. They have no training, no capacity. So that's another. So coming and tying it all back to, you know, why we are all here and what we can do is, in the non-profit sector, many of you who may be adjacent to the solid waste management space or are working with either with on civic action or with communities, there are ways of integrating waste management and the concepts around waste management, and the stakeholders who are important, which is pretty much everyone, into the work we do. And that's where the opportunity lies, because there is a huge opportunity. And that's all I have to say for today.
Thank you. Thank you.